Okay, so I'm going to spend a second getting some input from the user and then talking about changing things back and forth between types. So this is my input and typecasting lecture, blah, 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 usual header. My goal for right now is to learn how many eels are in the user's hovercraft. And that should be users possessed hovercraft. So the first thing we're going to do is learn about a new toy, which is the input function. Okay, so if I hit the read, or the information thing, it says read a string from standard input. The trailing new line is stripped. Not totally sure what that means, but fine. The prompt string, if given, is printed to standard output without a trailing new line. Okay, so let me see if I can figure out what that means. I think that means that if I put parens and then I can put a prompt in here. So obviously I'm going to ask how many eels are in your hovercraft. Okay, and then I'm going to hit go. And it's asking, oh, I forgot a question mark, so I'm going to put that in there. And let me hit run again. How many eels are in my hovercraft? I could put 10. Oh, that looks like shit. Yeah? See how it's not on the next line? So in order to make it kick to the next line and BT dubs. Oh, how do I get my little input thing? So that's this. The prompt string, if given, is printed to standard output without a trailing new line. What that means is that it's not going to kick the cursor to the next line. So if I want to kick it to the next line, I'm going to do a /n. And this is a new line or a carriage return if you're used to typewriter speak. So now see how it kicked my cursor to the next line. I would always encourage you to end prompts with that. And then you can put your 10 in here. And then it's not doing anything with that information. So what this does is this collects the user's input and then it returns it, which means that I need to set up a place to put it. So I'm going to put that into a variable that I'm going to call user said what. And I'm picking a suggestive name that's not very professional here. If you want to pick a better name, that's probably reasonable. So this line is ask the user how many eels, store the result in user said what variable. Okay, and then this is the point where we get to asking questions about typing. So if I want to ask what kind of thing is the user said what variable, I maybe just use that type function. And I get some nice autocomplete options here, so I'm just hitting tab occasionally to autocomplete. Okay, so 10. And it's telling me that this is a string. So if I wanted to use that as a number to say something like, so let me comment this line out right now. So I'm going to comment the kind of diagnostic line out. And I want to do something like reply to the user. So I want to reply how many eel eyes are in the hovercraft. So I'm going to say something like, so there are, and now this is the part where I have to kind of learn to format a little bit. So I'm going to do that this way. I'm going to put an F up front, and that's going to say this is a string to be formatted. And then I'm going to do 2 times user said what in there. Eel eyes in your hovercraft, period. Okay, so if I now say there are 20 eels in my hovercraft, it says there are 20 ELIs. That doesn't make any sense. What's it doing? How many eels? 12. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so probably, I don't know, let's try more. 345 eels in my hovercraft. See, it's just printing the number out twice. That's apparently what it thinks doubling a string should be. Remember the type of what the user said was a string, right? So if I say 12, it's treating 12 as though it's a string. If I wanted to force it to treat it as a number, I have an option. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say num eels, right, is going to be whatever the user said. And then I need to force that thing to be an integer, right? Or at least a number. So I'm going to do int. Whoa, what the heck? Okay. I'm going to do int of that. And what that's going to do is that's going to force it, right, to be an integer. And this is going to have some flaws to it, but it will at least work for this example. So I want, there are 20 eels. Uh-oh. Oh, what's wrong? Well, so this line was force user said what into an integer and store that in num eels, right? So then here, when I'm trying to format my string with twice what the user said, I don't really want what the user said in here. I want the number of eels in there, right? So that's gonna, now I'll say I have 123 eels, and so there are 246 eel eyes in the hovercraft. And then this line was diagnostic, so I'm going to comment that out, and I'm maybe going to comment above it. This is a diagnostic line. You don't usually need to comment that lines are diagnostic or not, but maybe do this for debugging. Okay. All right, so this is forcing things into integer type. If I wanted to force things into string type, I could use the str. So if I wanted to say, so in my previous example, I had this like, okay, so I have the number of eels is now an integer, right? And I maybe want to say, so if I try to print, and I want to print number of eels, and then to that add num eels, it's now going to complain, oops. It's now going to complain at me that it doesn't know how to do that. So it's going to say you can't concatenate strings and integers. So that's this part here, this number of eels is a string. This plus means add, right? And string addition is called concatenating. And then this is a number. So it's saying, dude, I don't know how to add a number in a string. Apparently I know how to multiply a number in a string, but I don't know how to add them. So if I want to add this, I need to make this thing a string again. So I use str to push a number into a string. And I say there are 123 eels. And then I get this thing with elis. And then also I still can print it out. So this is a useful typecasting. Let's see. So this is an example. So when I'm printing, I start with that F, and then I have a string. And then inside of that, if I put braces and some kind of either variable or a little expression, so like a little bit of math, then it'll just replace it with whatever that is. So that's an example of what's called a formatted string. And there are a bunch of ways to format strings in Python. Like this last one is just kind of forced sticking together of strings. This is actually not a great way to do this, but it works. And I think I spelled concatenation wrong. So that's the string concatenation method of getting a bunch of stuff together. This is formatting string methods. It should be noted here that this will break if the user types out a number. So if they say there's one eel, then it's saying, okay, so I can't do that. This is a good place for like some kind of validating of user input, but we don't have conditionals yet. We're missing some tools to do this right. So I'm just going to skip it for now. We'll get back to making this work a little better later. But for right now, I just want you to know that this part exists. So now you can ask the user questions, and you can use those questions to do some kind of response to the user.